TAFE spending will come under the microscope during Senate estimates this week, with the federal government accused of shortchanging vocational education by $214 million in the last financial year. Labor argues the underspend is not a new issue, claiming the Education Department has declined to spend close to $1 billion in funding over the past 5 years. Joining me now is a shadow Education Minister Tanya Plibersek, who has warned that there could be a tradie extension. Tanya Plibersek, first of all, is there a reasonable explanation for this underspend? Wouldn't you prefer the government save this money than spend it frivolously?
Well, that's not the choice that's on offer here. We've got an economy that's crying out for skilled workers. In one recent survey, 3/4 of employers said they couldn't find the skilled workers they needed. And we've got close to 2 million Australians who haven't got a job or want more hours of work. So we've got skills shortages right across the economy. Mechanics, plumbers, electricians, carpenters, hairdressers, pastry chefs. There's so many areas where we've got skills shortages. So we've got a desperate need for skilled workers. We've got Australians who want work or more hours of work, and the government has underspent the TAFE and training budget. You talked about just over $200 million in the last year, but cumulatively over the recent years, last few years, $919 million, close to $1 billion underspent. Now, this comes on top of the cuts. Yeah. We've been very critical of the cuts to TAFE and training, $3 billion of cuts, but this is money that the government has promised, has set aside, has got sitting there ready to go, and meanwhile our TAFE colleges are falling apart, and we've got skill shortages across the economy.
But these are demand-driven programs, so where should that $1 billion have been spent?
Well, I think that's a very convenient explanation from the government. If you are closing TAFE colleges, if you're cutting courses because the funding's not available, it's pretty hard to meet demand in the community to do those courses. Right across these programs, you look at employers not taking up the opportunity to put on apprentices because the government has designed programs that are clunky, that are unworkable for employers. You've got examples of businesses that are in desperate need of staff that could make use of these programs, but the programs are so badly designed that they don't, or they don't know about them. You've got people in regional communities who'd love to do the training to get a job, but don't have that training available to them anywhere near where they live. So these are deliberate, either deliberate decisions by the government to underspend, or they're incompetent. But they're either mean or incompetent. It's one or the other.
Well, why couldn't a simple explanation be that some Australians simply don't want to do those jobs where there are skills shortages? And look, I'm at liberty to point out that this is not a problem unique to this particular government. I think the figures show that under the previous Labor government, there was a fall in apprenticeships by the tens of thousands as well.
Okay, so there are 150,000 fewer apprentices today compared to when we left office. So 150,000 fewer apprentices and trainees today than when we left office. We've got fewer apprentices and trainees today than 10 years ago. In fact, more apprentices and trainees are dropping out of training than are completing their courses under this government. And we've got a skills shortage that is holding back Australian businesses. Look, I think, but going back to sort of your original question, the sort of implication there is it because people don't want to do this work? Are they job snobs? I don't know whether you get out much and talk to young people. In these areas where you've got youth unemployment of close to 1 in 4 young people without work, 1 in 5 young people without work in some parts of regional Australia, these kids are desperate for work, and if they could get an apprenticeship with a local employer, they would, they'd think all their Christmases had come at once. This government has made it harder for them to do that, and it's made it harder for employers. And look around the country at TAFE campuses. I mean, these are once great institutions that have been starved of funding, campuses closed, courses closed. We are looking at the extinction of the Australian tradie because this government has dropped the ball, and it's bad for individuals and it's bad for our economy.
Labor's calling for the farm household allowance to be extended indefinitely. The National Farmers Federation has said today, and in their drought plan, that perhaps the government should think about paying farmers to get off the land if it's becoming too hard. Why does Labor know better than the National Farmers Federation?
Well, we've only just seen this report from the National Farmers Federation with their, I think it's 6 points of how the drought should be confronted. And of course we will we'll work with the National Farmers Federation. Drought-affected communities are in the best position to tell us what they need. We've offered a bipartisan hand to the government. We've said that we're very happy to work with them in a drought cabinet to try and solve some of these issues, because we are facing the worst drought in living memory, and listening to farmers is important and getting the supports right. I mean, this government has kicked 600 people off the farm assistance payment. There's another 500 who'll lose it before Christmas. At a time like this, an unprecedented, extraordinary time, that just seems cruel. Yeah. If there are other measures that we can work with the government on, of course we'll do that too. Just
very quickly, Medevac, it was revealed in Senate estimates that 135 people have been transferred here. Only 13 have needed any kind of hospital treatment or hospitalisation. Does that tell you that perhaps some might be gaming that system?
Well, you can offer very intense medical treatment outside a hospital setting, particularly if you're talking about mental health supports. Look, what I see is doctors around Australia saying this legislation is important and it's necessary. I've got the Minister saying that he's worried about the character of some of these people. Well, he has the ability to reject people on character grounds if he thinks that's important. We know that people who come here for medical treatment, if they're not actively receiving medical treatment, will be in immigration detention. So I think this is an unnecessary scare campaign from the Minister for legislation that is working appropriately, as it was designed to do, bring sick people to Australia for treatment.